Thanks everyone for your patience. Looks like we've got quite a few folks logged in here. So everybody's been placed on listen-only mode. We will open up at the end for questions. You've got the ability to raise your hand on the GoToWebinar control panel there. So we'll just give it about one more minute here, and then we'll get things rolling. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Everyone, this is Mark Spires at Telecom Recovery. I'm going to start the call here. By the way, everybody's been placed into listen-only mode. Like I said, for those of you who joined early, you've heard me say this a few times. Everybody's on listen-only mode. We will open up at the end of the call for questions, but let's go ahead and get started. I'm sure we'll have a couple more people rolling in. And Joanne, I'm gonna let you get us rolling.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joanne Morgano, the Director of Marketing here at NJHA. As my communications have indicated to you, Telecom Recovery is an NJHA strategic partner, and we introduced our relationship about Telecom Recovery on the heels of Hurricane Sandy. And prior to that, NJHA was in the process of installing Telecom Recovery's Voice Shield. Telecom Recovery is a pioneer in the rapid recovery of communications after a telecommunications outage. And they have a unique focus on the restoration of incoming calls to existing phone numbers. So we also had a webinar in mid-December, and the reaction was very favorable, and Telecom Recovery has several proposals out to our hospitals. So the demand's been high to learn more about Telecom Recovery, and that's the purpose of today's seminar. So I want to turn it over to Mark, and as Mark said, we're going to take the questions at the end of the presentation.
All right. Well, thanks, Joanne. We'll go ahead and get started here. For those of you that are not familiar with the GoToWebinar interface, you've got a control panel there. You can minimize that by clicking on the orange arrow up in the control box. That'll get that out of your vision. Looks like there's a couple of folks who are still trying to get into the audio portion, so if you have any problems there, you can kind of raise your hand, and hopefully we can help with that. Otherwise, let's go ahead and get started. As Joanne mentioned, this is the second webinar we've now done for New Jersey Hospital Association, and the demand for the services we provide has been very high, especially in the wake of the Hurricane Sandy and the Sandy superstorm that affected the areas in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. What we do, as Joanne kind of started introducing to, is very unique. Telecom Recovery has a very, very sharp focus on restoring inbound and outbound phone communications during any kind of an outage, interruption, disaster, and as you'll see in just a moment, that can encompass quite a large piece of vulnerabilities to your organization. So that is what we do. It's not something that's done widely. There are not a lot of really good solutions, especially affordable solutions for this very purpose. But what we're going to show you today hopefully will be enlightening and educational. We're going to talk about some ways that hospitals that were impacted by the Sandy storm and have been impacted by previous events could have been covered with this type of protection. So clearly a very, very important service. Just to kind of introduce Telecom Recovery, our organization is about 7.5 years old. We were formed at that time by telecom industry veterans who had quite a bit of experience in this domain. What they acknowledged with their current customer base, or their customer base at the time, was that there wasn't a really good way to restore communications during outages. And so we dealt with critical organizations like hospitals, 911 centers, emergency operation centers, organizations that simply couldn't afford to have their communications go down. And we basically built this solution that you're about to see from the ground up to help them address those concerns without having to invest 6, 7, 8 figures and more capital expense to meet that objective. So the service we provide is widely deployed today across the U.S. Our flagship healthcare customer is the Cleveland Clinic, who's been using the system widely now for a few years. We've got hospitals throughout the U.S. in states pretty much across the continental U.S. and even up in Alaska utilizing the system to restore communications during outages. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, we'll open up for questions at the end, but let's just provide you an introduction to what we're doing here. Everybody should have the ability to see my screen now. I'm going to move into the presentation. The first slide that I'm going to share is it's a few years old. It's a little outdated, but the trend continues upward. What we're looking at is basically the increase in natural disasters, epidemics, and those kinds of things throughout the globe over the last 40 years or so. These things are all on the rise, and I know that you up in the Northeast can attest to that fully well. But nobody really knows why this is the case. There's certainly a lot of argument as to why, but these are important things to be prepared for, and big events. What we do at Telecom Recovery, though, is try to share the message that this isn't the primary threat to your organization's communications. It's something we have to be prepared for, but this guy is something more of a threat to your business than anything on that previous screen. And so the trick when you're administering communications within a hospital or any other critical organization is to make sure that you can address both. You can address the big natural disaster events and the big unforeseen circumstances like earthquakes and hurricanes and severe weather, but also be able to address the small daily stuff, whether it's a backhoe, line cut, or something like you might see on this list. This is a list of common causes of phone outages. These are literally things that we have recovered organizations from. Notice on there it says wildlife. We had an event up in the Pacific Northwest where squirrels chewed through a fiber optic phone line and took down a major communications conduit to several of the counties and areas up there. There was another event that we recovered businesses from in San Jose, California. Literally a coordinated attack where vandals coordinated the hacking of major communications lines at separate points throughout the city and literally took down the whole city for a good 12 to 14 hours. Equipment failures, man-made issues, little things like upgrades, snowstorms, ice storms, evacuation is another major threat that we need to be able to address. Some of your neighbors up in New York, some of those facilities had to be evacuated, and being able to communicate during those events is very, very difficult to do, and so those are all things that we need to address. So clearly when we look at a list like this, we could add to this 10 times over, and we'd be looking at a very large list of vulnerabilities. So here at Telecom Recovery, what we've done to make this a little more palatable is we've just kind of put into place what we call the 5 vulnerabilities of telecommunications. So in spite of all of those things we just saw and all the many hundreds, even thousands of points of threat to your communications, if you can recover from these 5 vulnerabilities that I'm about to share with you, then you're going to be in a good position, and you can really kind of withstand anything that comes your way. So the real 5 vulnerabilities to telecommunications are this. Number 1 is your equipment. Any equipment you have on site or based on your premises is vulnerable. And that can be a lot of things, whether it's just a simple software glitch or whether that equipment is affected by a flood or an on-site event, something like that. You need to have something in place that backs up all your on-site equipment. The second vulnerability is power. Now, in the world you guys operate in with hospitals, clearly you have generators and USB and things like that to back up the power. Some of that wasn't effective during Sandy. Obviously, some of the hospitals were affected by generators that were on ground level or where they couldn't get fuel to them effectively. And so one of the things we want to do is be able to address situations where power is affected as well. The third thing is what we call the last mile. This is a big vulnerability to you. This is basically the phone lines that connect you to your telecom provider. And this can be affected by anything from a simple line cut with a backhoe. We've seen traffic accidents. We've seen copper thieves that have affected this last mile. But anything that interrupts that last mile connection between you and your carrier is going to make it difficult, if not impossible, to communicate. Something we need to address. The fourth vulnerability is your telecom provider. And I've blocked out 2 pieces on this, your long distance carrier and your local carrier. Either one of these can cause a problem, and they can happen individual of each other or they can happen simultaneously. But just like what happened during the Sandy event, If your carrier goes down for any reason, if that central office fails or your carrier loses its ability to deliver your calls, you're clearly in a lot of trouble. And so having resilience beyond your carrier is something that most organizations don't even know is possible, but we're going to show you today how that can be done and how you can survive even when Verizon or Windstream or one of those local carriers fails. The fifth thing is evacuation. This is a tough one. You know, if you, heaven forbid, literally have to evacuate your facilities, being able to get calls still coming in and also making outbound calls is clearly critical. So it doesn't matter what caused the event, whether it was severe weather, whether it was wildlife or technology. If you can recover from these 5 vulnerabilities, then you can rest comfortably at night knowing that you're protected. The phones are down. Okay, so we look at this during an outage event. We talk to hospitals all over the U.S., and we've pretty much seen it all in terms of what organizations have done today to prepare. These are some of the existing solutions for being able to restore outbound communications. So having people in the facility be able to make outbound calls during an event. Oftentimes we see things like cell phones or handheld satellite phones. You've usually got radios and pagers. Many of you are probably still utilizing the old-fashioned call tree. So this is all good stuff. GETs and WEPS cards, notification systems, it's all good things and it's all very important. The clear kind of problem here is that it doesn't do anything for inbound. And when I say inbound communications, I'm talking about the general public or any employee who's outside of your facility that's dialing in and might have critical information or need critical information. So these are some things you can do today to get calls out. When we look at existing solutions for inbound, most often this is the one we see, scream and wait. Pretty frustrating position to be in. If you're a hospital during a phone outage, you're calling your carrier, Verizon, Windstream, Paytech, whoever it is, you're screaming at them and you're just sitting and waiting for them to come back to you with a solution. Very scary position to be in when you have lives on the line and critical operations that need to be resumed. The second thing we often see is go it alone. And what we mean by this is you've built technology and you've built redundancy on your own. You've put backup equipment in many cases on site, or you've brought in POTS lines or copper lines from your carrier as a backup. Unfortunately, most often those things are still relying on those same group of phone carriers, or they're even in the same trenches coming into your facilities that might be affected. So go it alone is kind of the second thing we see. And then last but not least is what we call carrier forwarding. This is basically having your phone company be able to forward your calls to another destination in the event of a problem. This didn't always work during Sandy and some of those other events. We saw people in hospitals in dire situations because they were relying on the carrier to provide that capability, and it wasn't there. We'll talk to you about how you can address some of that. So Telecom Recovery Shared Service Solution. We're going to look at a couple different solutions here in just a moment, but let me just kind of introduce the basic concept. As a Telecom Recovery customer, you have access to a very powerful state-of-the-art backup phone system. This is a system that is off-site in another geography. You would have backup through satellite technology and cloud-based backup as well. And so basically you're buying into this very, very powerful phone system with different points of redundancy throughout the U.S. where we can provide dial tone and phone service to your facilities and be completely unaffected by something that happens in a regional situation. Our solution is pre-configured. It's always on, always ready. It doesn't need any sort of special setup or anything like that. It's just kind of sitting there like a catcher's mitt waiting for the handoff of phone calls. And then it's controlled remotely. It doesn't matter where your people are. It doesn't matter what's going on. It's controlled remotely. We're not relying upon on-site equipment and on-site hardware. You can have an administrator off-site sitting in a coffee shop controlling your recovery. It's not relying on things that are on-site. And then maybe best of all, shared cost. So to buy dedicated backup phone service and equipment is very, very expensive. What this service allows you to do is share the cost of all the capacity we've purchased throughout the U.S. So you're getting far greater redundancy and resilience in your communications at a fraction of the cost because you're sharing it with hospitals all throughout the U.S. So we can go into detail more on this, and of course happy to have conversations offline. I will talk just very briefly about the cost of the solution at the end of the conversation for those of you that have questions about that. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to move into a description of the two key services that we provide at Telecom Recovery. I'm going to go over this pretty quickly, and I'm sure there's going to be questions. Again, I will open up at the end. The service in the diagram that's on your screen at this moment is what we call Voice Shield. This is the entry-level service that we provide to hospitals. It is completely virtual. Keep in mind as you look at this diagram, there is no hardware, no software, no change of carriers. This is a completely cloud-based virtual service. But what we're looking at is this. Over here on the left-hand side, you have a caller that's dialing into the hospital. Typically, that call would traverse the public phone network where it would arrive at the hospital over here at its destination. Now, this red X represents any one of those 5 vulnerabilities we just talked about. Basically, the calls cannot make it to the destination. This is how Voice Shield would recover you. It's a 3-step process. The first step, as you're seeing highlighted here, is what we call instant reroute. It's the diversion. During an outage, the first thing you have to be able to do is get calls away from the point of failure. And so we set something up with your organization in advance. This is done, it's predefined, it's set up in advance so that during an event, you've got this automatic kickover where calls start flowing to the path we've pointed them to. So the first step is diversion. Again, that's something we've done hundreds of times, and we'll walk you through and make it very seamless. The second step that's being highlighted here in our recovery is what we call control. The web call controller now, you'll notice calls are now being pointed from the public phone network to this web call controller. Anybody who picks up the phone and dials your phone numbers during the event is now going to land on this web call controller. The beauty of this is this web call controller is off-site in another geography. You've predetermined how you want it to act during an event, but you also have on-the-fly real-time control. So you're no longer relying on the phone carrier to fix your situation. You can now determine what you want to happen. Once the calls hit this web call controller, you can focus on the third step of your recovery, which is what we call delivery. This is getting the calls to the right people. Now, as a hospital during an outage, the last thing you want calls doing is floating all over the place to different departments and locations and people who can't necessarily help your callers. You really want to focus on getting the right calls to the right people. So with this virtual solution, the way we do that is our web call controller acts like your backup phone system, and we can send calls to the people that are still inside of your facilities using things like copper lines, POTS lines, cell phones. If cell phones are still working, we can send calls to the people that need to get them on cell phones. We use IP platforms like Skype, Vonage, MagicJack, all these crazy different IP technologies you hear about we can utilize. We can send calls to satellite phones. There's just an unlimited number of possibilities, and again, this is all defined in advance so that it's seamless during your event. Now, that assumes everybody's still working inside of the building. If we have an event where we have to evacuate or where a weather or pandemic situation forces people to work remotely, we can utilize this web call controller to adapt on the fly. And what we would do is have alternate destinations for your callers, whether that be a hot site or a recovery site, maybe satellite phones, answering services, voicemail, sending calls to people on cell phones. You might have alternate locations, clinics. We can take advantage of any facility that still has the ability to accept calls. All of this is better than a caller picking up a phone and getting a ring no answer or a fast busy, or the worst case scenario, which is the message that says this number's been disconnected or is no longer in service. Clearly all very unpleasant scenarios. So that's Voice Shield. Again, completely virtual service. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to expand this one step further into the second tier of our offerings, which is what we call Never Down Hospital Service. Now this is quite similar to what I just displayed. There's going to be one key difference though. Again, over here on the left, we've got callers that are dialing into the hospital, and it's important to remember that they're not dialing any different phone numbers. People can pick up the phones and dial all the same phone numbers they're used to dialing. Those calls hit the public phone network, and during our outage, we are rerouting the calls to Telecom Recovery's web call controller. What's different about Never Down Hospital Service is we're now adding a small satellite dish to the top of your facility. We're also installing a proprietary hardware device down here in the building that connects to the back of your phone system. This utilizes existing T1 ports or PRI ports, but we install this little hardware device, and now, during the event, we can send your calls via satellite to the dish we've put on your facility into our little hardware device, which basically decompresses those and puts them right back into the phone system. This solution makes it as if there was no outage at all. You're getting up to 92 concurrent phone calls coming in over this satellite connection and going right back into your existing phone system. This is during an event like Sandy, where your carrier's not able to provide dial tone. Telecom Recovery's got those calls coming right in. This means any phone in the facility could be picked up and you could make an outbound phone call the same as you always would. This means anybody on the outside of the hospital can make a call to a specific doctor or to a specific destination, and that call is going to ring on that desk just like it would have if there had been no event. This is the most powerful communications recovery possible. Now, oftentimes people will ask what happens in the event that that satellite is affected or if we have to evacuate. If something goes wrong and we lose the connection, we still have this web call controller that stands behind all of this and acts like an intelligent backup phone system. So in any case, you always have something to fall back to. You can pull back to the web call controller and send calls to cell phones, alternate locations, wherever your people are. The most powerful part of this recovery is you have complete control. You're never relying on your carrier. You've got the ability to move calls and adapt on the fly. So it's a very quick overview. I'm going to open up just in a moment here for questions. Let me just kind of go to the screen. Typically on a call like this, we would do a demonstration. We would literally open up our interface and do a full demonstration of how it works. Because of the environment of our call here, I'm not going to do that, but I wanted to give you just a quick look at what the platform looks like. And I do that to highlight the simplicity of it. The system is very easy to use. There's no programming, no technical knowledge that's required. We have 24-hour a day, 7-day a week, 365-day a year support technicians. That service is not at all outsourced. Everything is done inside, so you can contact our support team 24 hours a day. They're there to help you. They have complete access to your account. But basically, this is all just really, really easy. We have people who are non-technical folks administering these accounts. It's point-click. It's drag and drop. There's nothing difficult to do. But as you look down the left side of this sample menu, you'll notice we've got all kinds of things from backup phone systems to conference bridges to fax recovery. Obviously, you're getting faxes at these critical departments. Just all kinds of functionality here from hotlines. And one of the other things that's included in this that I don't want to end the call without mentioning is what we call VoiceCast. Telecom Recovery has built a very powerful emergency notification system into this platform that gives you the ability to distribute voice recorded messages, text messages, and email messages, hundreds or thousands of those kinds of messages simultaneously. So a lot of you have probably already purchased an emergency notification system or perhaps are discussing the purchase of an emergency notification system. Be aware that that is something that is included in this technology. So when you buy this service, not only do you restore your inbound and outbound phone services, but you have a tremendous capability with emergency notification, conference lines, the ability to communicate with your employees wherever they are and receive responses. So there's just a tremendous amount of power. My colleague Tim is pinging me to remind me to tell you as well that there's upwards of 99% uptime on this platform. So you're not going to have really any concern whatsoever about communications. You're buying an insurance service, and it's there when you need it. Before I open up for questions, and by the way, go ahead and click on the little raising your hand button on your platform there if you have any questions, and I'll take those in the order they come up. Let's talk about cost very quickly. I'm just going to give you a kind of a broad range because each facility is obviously different. The completely virtual telecom recovery service is generally about $950 up front. $950 is a one-time cost for setup, setup, testing, configuration, and so forth. And then you're going to pay an annual service cost that really ranges anywhere from $2,000 annually to, for a ton of capacity, maybe $10,000 annually. So there's just a broad case of basically capacity. So our clients purchase capacity on the system, and so it can be very, very inexpensive to just kind of get your foot into the solution and just have something in place, and then we can scale it upwards to give you just a tremendous amount of capacity. So to add the satellite capability, the hardware solution, the one-time cost ranges really between probably $10,000 one time up to $15,000 one time. That's for all of the hardware, software, equipment, on-site installation, testing, configuration, everything. About $10,000 to $15,000 up front, and that same service has an annual cost of anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000 annually as well. So there are no large, outrageous capital expenses here. Basically, you pay a one-time upfront cost that's relatively small, and then you just pay annually to have access to the system whenever you need it. System works. It's very powerful. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Sorry, and just one other item of note. We do include monthly usage minutes as well as satellite throughput if you choose to go that route ultimately.
Absolutely. As Tim mentions, you have the ability to utilize the system during non-emergencies as well. So a lot of our customers will set up hotlines and utilize the faxing and the conference bridges and the notification systems. So this can be used on a day-to-day basis, and it does get used very often by our customers as well. So that's all included in the membership, the annual membership. But the system works. It's been heavily tested. We've recovered hospitals and other organizations from all kinds of different events. It's a seamless recovery. It's very elegant, very simple to do, very pain-free and stress-free. Deployment of this is very simple as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open up for questions. If anybody, I don't see any hands raised at the moment. Happy to answer any questions at all about the technology or how it works. Go ahead and hit the button on your platform there to raise your hand. Okay, not seeing any hands raised. Joanne, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you. Any questions or anything from your end, Joanne? It doesn't look like we have any questions.
No, we're good.
Okay.
From our end.
All right, everyone. If there are no other questions.
Tim, this is Mike. If anybody does have a question after this session is over, please feel free to reach out to either us at NJHA or to Tim.
Absolutely.
If something pops up tomorrow or whenever you're thinking about it.
Okay, one other thing. We also recorded the presentation, so if you need a copy of it, just send me an email, jmorgano@njha.com.
Definitely.
Okay.
So that's that. I'll make that available through Joanne, and then Tim's information is on the screen at the moment as well. If you have any questions, you can contact Tim. We're happy to. Typically, when we begin a conversation like this, we'll go into and do kind of a one-on-one demonstration. So we're happy to schedule a time to go through it one-on-one, answer your questions, and go through it a little more specifically to your environment as well. So we're happy to do that. All right. Doesn't look like any hands have raised, so we'll go ahead and wrap up from here. We appreciate everybody being on and taking time out of your day. Hopefully it's been helpful and informative, and look forward to hearing from you individually with your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Okay.
Thank
Take care,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.